History is often a story of overwhelming force, of massive empires and unstoppable armies that crush all who stand in their way. In the year 208 AD, China was about to be unified by such a force. The brilliant and ruthless warlord Cao Cao stood on the banks of the mighty Yangtze River, his colossal army at his back. His 1,000-ship fleet, covering the water as far as the eye could see. He was one final victory away from conquering the south and becoming the undisputed master of all of China. But standing against his seemingly invincible war machine was a desperate, fractious, and massively outnumbered alliance of southern warlords. By all logic, they were doomed. What happened next was not a battle of numbers, but a battle of wits. A clash of geniuses that would culminate in a river of fire, shatter the ambition of a would-be emperor, and change the course of Chinese history forever. Welcome to the Histofy. Today we unravel the real story of the Battle of Red Cliffs. To understand the Battle of Red Cliffs, we must first understand the world that created it. For centuries, the Han Dynasty had ruled over a unified and powerful China. But by the turn of the 3rd century, the dynasty had crumbled. The emperor was a mere puppet, and the country had fractured into a chaotic patchwork of territories ruled by ambitious and ruthless warlords. From this chaos, one man rose above all others. Cao Cao, a brilliant strategist, a gifted poet, and a brutally efficient politician who had seized control of the Han Emperor and the entire north of China. He was a master of political maneuvering and military might, and his stated goal was to reunite the empire under his control. By 208 AD, he had crushed all his northern rivals. Only the lands south of the great Yangtze River remained defiant. Standing against him were two primary powers. The first was the young warlord Sun Quan. He had inherited a stable and prosperous territory in the southeast. Built by his father and older brother, he had a strong navy and a host of loyal and brilliant advisors. The second was Liu Bei, a wandering idealist and distant relative of the Han royal family. Liu Bei had a reputation for virtue and honor, but commanded only a small, battle-weary army. His greatest asset was his chief strategist, a man whose name would become synonymous with genius itself, Zhuge Liang. After a recent, crushing defeat, Liu Bei and his followers were refugees, fleeing south from Cao Cao's advancing army. Their situation was desperate. They had only one hope for survival: to convince the powerful but hesitant Sun Quan to join them in an alliance against the northern invader. Cao Cao's invasion force was a terrifying spectacle. He boasted of commanding 800,000 men in number, likely exaggerated for psychological effect. But modern historians still place his army at over 250,000 soldiers. It was the largest army China had ever seen. His fleet sailed down the Yangtze like a moving city, a seemingly endless flotilla of warships. The south was paralyzed with fear. When Liu Bei's strategist Zhuge Liang arrived at the court of Sun Quan, he found it in a state of panic. Most of Sun Quan's advisors and generals were urging immediate surrender. They argued that resisting Cao Cao's massive force was suicide. To fight would be to guarantee their own annihilation. This was Zhuge Liang's moment. In a masterful display of diplomacy and psychological insight, he addressed Sun Quan in his court. He didn't just appeal to their honor. He presented a cold, logical analysis of the situation. He pointed out that Cao Cao's massive army was not as invincible as it seemed. His soldiers were mostly from the dry north, unfamiliar with the humid southern climate and already suffering from disease. More importantly, they were infantrymen, not sailors, who were completely inexperienced in naval warfare on the vast Yangtze River. He argued that Cao Cao's force was a paper tiger, a giant with weak legs. His words bolstered the resolve of Sun Quan's own chief military commander, the brilliant and handsome Zhou. Together, Zhou and Zhuge Liang convinced the young Sun Quan to reject surrender and make a stand. The desperate alliance was formed. Their combined forces numbered only 50,000 men, outnumbered at least 5 to 1. They would meet Cao Cao's fleet at a strategic choke point on the river, a place of steep reddish-brown cliffs known to history as Chibatha Red Cliffs. As the two fleets faced each other across the wide river, a strategic stalemate ensued. Cao's forces were too numerous to be defeated in a direct assault, but they were also suffering greatly. As Zhuge Liang had predicted, the northern soldiers, unused to life on the water, were ravaged by seasickness and disease. To solve this problem, Cao Cao made a fateful and arrogant decision. On the advice of a turncoat, he ordered his entire fleet of thousands of ships to be chained together, iron links binding vessel to vessel. The goal was to create a massive, stable, floating platform, turning the fleet into a solid ground camp to reduce the rocking of the waves and make it easier for his men to move and fight. In doing so, he solved the problem of seasickness, but he created a new, far deadlier vulnerability. His mighty fleet was now a single immobile target, a floating prison. Observing this from across the river, the allied strategists Zhou and Zhuge Liang saw their opportunity. They could not win with swords and spears. They would win with fire. Their plan was a masterpiece of deception. They needed to get a squadron of fire ships close to Cao Cao's fleet without raising suspicion. To do this, they staged a fake surrender. One of Sun Quan's most trusted veteran commanders, Huang Gai, wrote a letter of defection to Cao Cao. In the letter, Huang Gai claimed that he was frustrated with the impossible odds and was ready to bring his squadron of ships over to the northern side. To make the ruse believable, Huang Gai was publicly beaten in the Allied camp for insubordination, an act of sacrifice to sell the lie. Cao Cao, arrogant and confident, took the bait. He eagerly awaited the arrival of the defecting ships, seeing it as the final nail in the coffin of the Southern Alliance. The trap was set. The plan required one final, crucial element beyond their control: the wind. For an attack from their position to work, the wind needed to blow from the southeast, pushing the ships towards Cao Cao's camp. But in winter, the wind almost always blew from the northwest. Then, on a fateful night, the impossible happened. The wind shifted. The legends written later in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms would claim that the master strategist, Zhuge Liang, used magic to summon this wind. In reality, he was likely just a brilliant meteorologist who understood the local weather patterns better than his enemies. Under the cover of darkness, Huang Gai's squadron of 10 ships set sail. They were loaded not with soldiers, but with bundles of dry reeds, fatty oils, and sulfur. As they approached Cao's massive chained fleet, the northern soldiers, expecting a surrender, cheered. But when they were within range, Huang Gai gave the signal. His men set their own ships ablaze. The small squadron, now a fleet of raging infernos, propelled by the strong southeastern wind, crashed directly into the center of Cao Cao's immobilized armada. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The fire leaped from the small ships to the massive warships. Because they were chained together, no ship could escape. The fire spread uncontrollably, turning the entire northern fleet into a single, massive funeral pyre. Yangtze River itself seemed to be on fire. The night sky lit up as bright as day. Cao's men, trapped on the burning chained vessels, were either consumed by the flames or drowned as they leaped into the river. As chaos engulfed the northern fleet, the main Allied force launched its assault. Small maneuverable ships attacked the panicked and burning remnants of Cao Cao's army. On the riverbanks, Allied soldiers ambushed the northern land camps. The battle turned into a complete rout. Cao Cao's invincible army was shattered. He himself barely escaped the inferno with a small escort, fleeing back to the north in humiliation. The Battle of Red Cliffs was one of the most decisive battles in history. In a single night, Cao Cao's ambition to conquer the south was permanently destroyed. He would never again command such a massive force, and he would never again have such a clear opportunity to unify China. The victory ensured the survival of the southern warlords, cemented the power of Sun Quan in the southeast, who would go on to found the kingdom of Eastern Wu, and it gave the refugee Liu Bei the breathing room he needed to move west and establish his own state of Shuhan. Cao Cao's domain in the north would become the Kingdom of Wei. The inferno at Red Cliffs didn't unify China, it shattered it. It was the birth certificate of the legendary Three Kingdoms period, an era of warfare, romance, and heroism that would become the setting for China's most beloved epic novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The battle remains a timeless lesson in strategy. It is a story of how ingenuity can defeat brute force, how a deep understanding of psychology, deception, and even the weather can overcome impossible odds. It proves that sometimes the fate of an empire rests not on the size of its army, but on the brilliance of a few great minds. At the Histofy, we don't just tell stories, we dig into them. If this kind of storytelling hits you right in the curiosity, subscribe. More ancient wars, lost empires, and real human drama are coming. This was the Histofy. I'll see you in the next one.